So it's been about a month, 4 weeks since we did our first mite counts here on the experimental colonies. We're gonna do counts today. Check that their weight looks good. They've had plenty of nectar and pollen coming in, so kind of expect that the weight should look good. You'll notice as we open these, we do have some propolis traps on here as well that will be setting to the side. But we also want to take a look at colony size comparatively to the others, and each colony's brood pattern, even though we are late in the year. But curious to look at that stuff as we go. We finally ran out of our case of rubbing alcohol from COVID and have some of the Dawn Ultra dish solution here, 1 to 2 tablespoons into a gallon of water, which we've used before and it does work well. But going to be trying out, we've had one of these before, one of the Ceracell mite wash jars, and I don't know for what reason, but they changed the design here. There's a square versus round one here. We'll try both of those out today as well. So this is going to take some time. We want to get good counts on all of these. We may get a final count in 3 weeks. If any colonies are over 9, they will get treated with formic acid, which is pretty fast treatment, organic, but very aggressive treatment. We do not want a runaway colony affecting the rest. There is one colony, one of the Harbo colonies, that had washed a 6 a month ago, and a couple of weeks ago I did test that one again, just that colony, to see where it was headed, and it was up to an 8. So that wouldn't surprise me if that one gets pulled from the test and is over threshold. First one is a Harbo. Putting honey up on top. Yep, pretty full. Nice looking colony. Kind of a cloudy, could rain, could drizzle type of day. So probably have to use some smoke today is the expectation here. But they are definitely packed out with resources. So we'll see if there's much brood in here yet or not. Still brood, but lots of resources. Still eggs in there. She's definitely scaling back on the brood as they backfill this. You can see nectar where brood was. There's still eggs there, but definitely On this particular colony, some winding down. Looking for my queen. A little worked up with this weather, I think. Get our half cup bees. Won't strap it down yet until we get the mite count. Checking my numbers here. 1 is over there. Down through 9 and 10. 11 is up here. Going down through 20. I'm saying that more for me than anything. I'm going to record these later. I'm using this Dawn dish soap. It is important to lift this out so that you can see the count. And that's a 1 on number 11, Harbo. All right, still drizzling outside. Here's some results. If I can read it, kind of scratched it on a piece of paper here. The 4 Harbos. One went from a 1 to a 3. One went from a 1 to a 0. The one that was high had gone to a 6, had gone to an 8 2 weeks ago. It was down to 5. It's 5. The 4th Harbo stayed at a 1, 1 to a 1. Purdue mite biters, 2 to a 6, 0 to a 6. Another one, 0 to 6. One went 1 to 7. Randy Oliver, one of them got pulled out. It went from a 1 to a 10. We treated it with Formic. One went from a 0 to a 5. 1 to a 1, staying at 1. 0 to a 5. Pauline, 2 of them got pulled out. One went from 0 to 10. 1 to 10. The third was 0 to 6. Fourth was 0 to 7. And then controls 1 to 2, 1 to 8, 1 to 4, and 3 to 5. These were not perfect control colonies. We were trying to use a commercial line here to compare with, who says that makes no claims as far as hygienic, and we're only doing a small sample anyway, but at any rate, that didn't work out as far as including 4 of those, so we just pulled 2 that were open mated mutts, if you will, but they were off our own genetics, which we've got a lot of stuff going on, including VSH carniolan. And so the one that's a 1 to a 2 and the other one that's a 1 to a 4, those are ours. The commercial ones went from 1 to 8 and 3 to 5. So that kind of helps explain if you're wondering, you know, why are these standard commercial colonies not doing worse. At any rate, so 3 got pulled out, but it's important to note we're at the end of September, so a count of 10 for a colony not being treated is not terrible. It's not a 30, it's not a 40. It was interesting to see some of the Harbo go up and go back down, but again, we're not having the goal of, no matter what, the lowest counts, the most mite resistant colonies. We want mite resistance, but we want to balance that with temperament as well as colony size and honey production. And so that's one of the things I looked at. I looked at the brood, looked at the size of the colony, and I looked at, they've all been put here during a good fall flow in this location, and some of them didn't do well as far as the amount they pulled in, the colony size, maybe scaled back too much. The Purdue mite biters did not pull in, less than half, maybe a third of what the Paul Line and the Randy Oliver pulled in. The Harbo, not as bad as the Purdue mite biters, but definitely less than the Paul Line and the Randy Oliver. And the control colonies were all pulling in good amounts, which is not a real surprise there. What's interesting is the Randy Olivers, I was kind of feeling not great about them midway through this trial, because they started out kind of rough. They were not looking as good of colonies as what they do right now, and they definitely have maintained a nice colony size and have produced fairly similar to the Paul Line. So we'll continue looking at things. Again, we're just trying to improve what we have. I'm okay with genetics as long as they are easy to work and produce a lot of honey and produce significantly more than some other genetics, if they need a little bit of organic mite treatments. And I'm not talking about where you can't, it's hard to get them under control. I've seen people with colonies like that, and I don't think that describes any of ours anyway. But I'm trying to find a balance. I know of people who have, treatment-free colonies that basically produce little or no honey, and that certainly is not one of our goals. So hopefully in another 3 weeks we'll do final mite counts. I have to think about what we're going to do as far as this mite counts. It's going to be into October, mid-October. There's not a lot that can be done treatment-wise other than maybe oxalic acid, and counts do go up the later you go into the year before everything becomes broodless after Thanksgiving when the brood is gone. So we'll see where that goes, and we'll see what these colonies look like. Most of them were heavy enough. The Purdue mite biters, as I said, other than maybe one that looked really decent weight-wise, the other 3 not so much. So to kind of keep an eye on that as well as we go into the fall. So yeah, I have a few final thoughts here as we're wrapping up this video. I know not everyone probably agrees with the approach or how we're doing this, but it's experimental. It's not obviously a large sample, so not highly scientific, but it's thinking back on what our goals are. It's for us and for our customers. We're just trying to maintain high quality queens, and one of the things that we wanted to do was increase the level of mite resistance, but also increase honey production. And I know when you go in one direction or the other, if you go just for honey production, maybe you lose some other traits, or just for mite resistance, you'd probably lose some traits. So we're trying to balance that out, which is not super easy to do. Thinking back over our data too, I was looking through it. We'll probably drop those control colonies in the spring, since it's such a small sample anyway. I don't think there's a whole lot of value of keeping those. We're dropping any colonies that we ended up treating, so there's 3 that are getting dropped. And then look at the separate groups. If there are things that disqualify certain groups, where you only end up with 1 colony left out of the 4, and we don't want to continue that any longer, we'll probably drop those. And we'll probably increase the sample size of any groups, and by groups I mean like Harbo or Pauline. We will increase the sample size for next year, and look at kind of the same thing. We'll probably fold the winners, if you will, in late spring, probably May, into increasing their use in the drone yards, and maybe even as an option for customers. But continue the work in evaluating how they do, how they produce. We're definitely going to get a weight on those colonies here for October, because to me that's very important as well. If they do really well for mites, but there's some other problem that doesn't suit our needs, I want to know that. I was looking down through my averages, and that's just, I'm using average very loosely since there are only 4 colonies in each group. It's really kind of hard to use an average. But on the UBO test, the Harbo did test the best. They tested what they would call the good range. And again, I think the jury's still kind of out on how that relates to everything else. We'll do more testing in May and see if this matches up. But initial look is that for those 4 colonies, their average mite counts, if you take the 4 colonies, are the same for August and September. Now we'll see what happens come October. The Purdue, which kind of mixed UBO testing results, the average, it would be considered to be not yet in the great range for UBO, but they went from a 0.8 average to a 6.3 in September. We'll see what they do in October. And again, I do have major concerns there with the size of those colonies, how much honey they brought in. Randy Oliver, which didn't test well at all on UBO, went from 0.5 to an average of 5.3. But again, the size of the colonies, the amount of honey, it seems like when we do our weights, they seem to have done well as far as that is concerned. The Pauline also did really well, very well, as far as the weights and size of colonies. They did not so well on the UBO. They went from a 0.3 mite average in August to an 8.3 in September, with those 2 colonies being pulled out. Part of me wishes that we could not treat those 3 colonies and see how they do in October, but we had already decided in advance that like when we hit a 10 or higher, we're over the 9, we just can't accept the risk there. So we'll see. We'll keep evaluating things, keep bringing in these other factors, how they do over the winter, increase the sample size of any that we're very happy with for one reason or another, explain to you why we're happy with those, and maybe even add another group or two in, depending how things are going, so we can kind of constantly be improving the queens that we use, the genetics that we use, and what we have to offer.